So this ought to be a little bit interesting. Normally I do walkthroughs, screen videos, things like that on things that I already know how to do, like Photoshop tutorials, coloring, digital painting, that kind of thing. I'm fairly new to ZBrush, it's all new to me. I'm still figuring out a lot of things. As evidence, this entire video was supposed to be a time lapse and captured at this speed. But somewhere along the line, I screwed up and I started recording at normal speed. So I figured I would do kind of a voiceover to fill the time so you wouldn't just look at a thing. This is sort of a personal project. It's a self-portrait. You can see in the upper left-hand side that I've got a reference of a little illustration I did of myself hunched over a cartooning desk. And so I figured I would do a 3D version of it for practice, but also so I could use it for promotional materials. And if I need to send a photo of myself, I could just send this cute little version. So I started out with just a polysphere and mushed it around and did some dynamushing with Dynamesh. I don't know if anyone else uses that term, but it makes sense to me. Dynamesh is a great way to just play with the digital clay and not worry about things like edge loops or polygons or whether enough you have enough resolution in a certain section. You could just get right into it and start sculpting, which for a cartoonist is pretty cool. Here's where I started screwing up. So now this next section is going to be a lot slower. But yeah, so you can use Dynamesh to just kind of block out forms and push and pull things. I use the standard move brush a lot. I use the clay tube buildup brush quite a bit, and the Damien standard brush to kind of do the creases and the indents and things like that. For somebody who just draws cartoons all the time, this workflow is pretty good. I've kind of dabbled in 3D for a very long time. I started using Maya back when it was still an Alias product, mostly because it was Mac compatible and I had a Macintosh workstation. So it was one of the few high-end 3D or prosumer 3D packages that I could get my hands on. So bought a copy, tried screwing around with it, and I could never quite get the hang of character modeling, because it was always I found the process to be pretty time consuming. And for somebody who's used to just picking up a piece of paper and drawing what's in their head, going pixel by pixel, polygon by polygon to build up a form is frustrating. So I've never really done any good character work that I felt worth showing off, I guess. I've tried, but it's never really happened. So with ZBrush and Dynamesh, it kind of frees me from having to worry about edge loops. I can go back. Fortunately, ZBrush gives you a lot of tools that you can remesh things and set up your edge loops, and even if you need to redo your polygons by hand, you could do that too. But for somebody who's just used to drawing things in their head, ZBrush is pretty close to just getting a lump of clay and mushing it around. Except I don't have to worry about making enough workspace or keeping the clay away from Hazel so she doesn't eat things. It's all digital, so I could just start pushing and pulling things. So here I'm just trying to check proportions. I decided to choose a cartoony self-portrait because I don't have to worry about accurate anatomy too much. I don't have to worry about accurate proportions. Like this face is completely stretched. The mouth is way lower than it should. The nose is much longer. Those cheekbones don't exist in my face, and I don't really look like this. But the idea is to just kind of give you an impression of what I might look like. So I'm just using, let's see, what is the material? I think it's just the standard wax preview thing. Still pushing around forms, masking things, moving things around. I'm probably going to end up taking this bust or whatever I end up with and rendering it in Maya. I still haven't got a handle on ZBrush's renderer, so I need to, or maybe I'll just use this to kind of learn more about ZBrush's renderer. So this is the wax material. Gives you a lot of good highlights, and it kind of lets you see forms a little bit easier than the standard the skin material that I was using before. So I busted that out so I could see more defined highlights and see what the hell is going on with the mesh there. More turning around, messing around with the neck area. That cheek part looked a little bit too sharp of a transition, so I smoothed that out a little bit. For most of this, I'm using symmetry when I sculpt, which is something that's really cool. Sometimes I wish Photoshop had something like that. So at this point, I decided that I needed to lay out the UVs in such a way that I could, if I wanted to paint the face texture in Photoshop or something like that. So this is UV Master. The red part, when you go and press the default, sometimes there's a seam like right in the face of whatever it is you're working with. So the red areas are the parts that UV Master is going to try to protect when it lays out the UVs. So I of course I want the face to be one single piece, so I protected that with the red. Did that again, and I got the result that I wanted, and so I copied the UVs onto the base mesh. Here's me trying to figure out how to make poly paint work. Like I said, I'm still learning how to navigate my way through things, and I'm probably going to have to mess with poly paint a little bit more. But at this point, I wanted to put some color on the model, just so I wouldn't be looking at a weird pinkish blob kind of thing. I guess it's dangerous to texture too early because it can get in the way of sculpting, and there's some more details that I want to work out. But I thought I would just throw in some color just to see what I could get. This is me screwing around with the clay tubes brush in RGB mode with the spray, and I didn't like any of that, so I got rid of most of what I did there. Like I said, I'm learning. It's a learning process, and you get to see the ugly process of me trying to figure shit out. So, yep. Now my nose isn't really that red in real life, but I figure for a cartoony version, I don't know, it kind of fits the style of what I'm going for. I'll probably, I think I did some more red in the cheeks and under the eyes and the lips and the ears a little bit. I could probably do a lot of that with subsurface scattering in Maya, but fuck it, paint a texture. That's what it's here for. Polypaint is awesome. It lets you paint directly on the model and then export that out for refinements if you want to, clean up your texture a little bit or add more detail. You can also do all that stuff in ZBrush with like Spotlight and things like that. But I don't know. I don't think I need to go too much detail in this texture because it's a cartoony representation. I'm also terrible at realism, so that's why I went with a cartoony face. I don't do realism in my comics, and I don't do realism in 3D, so I don't know. We'll see if that's a skill that I end up developing. Probably not. There are other people who can do that. The under areas of my eyes I'm going to hit with a lot darker shade. I tend to have dark bags under my eyes because I never get enough sleep, and especially now with a newborn, sleep is a long lost friend. But I mean, you get more in the day, you get more done when you're not asleep, so it's a double-edged sword. Adding in some darker tones, some browns. I guess this is, even though this is 3D, this is how I would approach shading a face if I was doing a digital painting. The bags under the eyes kind of accentuate the tiredness in the face, so I would hit that with a darker color. and some red where the skin is a little bit thinner, so, or where there's more blood in that area, so around the tips of the nose, the tips of the ears, bags under the eyes, the lips, of course. And so I'm using a darker color, a brownish, grayish brown, to kind of darken up some of the areas. Definitely the bags under the eyes, some of the chin, some of the lips. So yeah, there's a lot more to ZBrush that I've got to figure out. Poly painting is another one of those things. Like, if I don't want to lay out the UVs, can I just poly paint on the thing? I don't know. So, I'm figuring it out as I go along. Zooming in and zooming out, I sculpted a lot of this with perspective turned on. Every once in a while I would turn perspective off. So in the case of placing the eyeballs, I turned perspective off to get them in the right position. Here I need a little bit more visual detail, so I turned on the wax, the wax material, and now back to the basic skin shader. At some point I do hair, but I guess that's a little bit further along. I'm trying to accentuate the bags under the eyes. Here I'm doing a little bit of asymmetrical sculpting. I think I'm gonna be pushing this expression a lot more. So, but right now I'm just trying to block out a basic shape that I can start detailing and refining later. So that part will be really boring. I might not record that. But yeah, a lot of Damien standard brush work here. The Damien standard brush is great for creases under the eyes or defining transitions between areas like the nostrils or the under part of the chin, that kind of stuff. There's some funky stuff going on under the lip that I need to fix. It will be covered mostly with a beard, but it's always good to play. So I think it's starting to kind of look like a screwed up version of myself. So what I'm doing now is going to mask out a section for the beard, which I will extract and then start working on that form there. That looks pretty good. And then I'll do the same kind of thing with the eyebrows, paint the mask on first, and then do extract with the subtool, and then I'll start working on the eyebrows there. It's a little too thick. You can change the thickness there. I'm trying to figure out what thickness I want for the extraction. And now I'm going to go in and start refining things. I use the clip brush to kind of shave down the eyebrows a little bit so they're more thin and not so bushy. I have pretty thick eyebrows, but the cartoon version of myself, I wanted to have thinner eyebrows. Just, I don't know, it fit. So I thought I could do this with symmetry turned down, but I guess you can't. So the eyebrows will not be even, which is fine because, it adds a little bit of character. The unevenness adds a lot of character. And when I draw regularly, I can't draw things in perfect symmetry. So at this point, when I go back in and start detailing things and messing with the expression and adding more creases, I'll probably do that with the symmetry turned off, so I can, just play around with forms and do it that way. So I'm pulling things, softening this out. At some point, I'm gonna start using the Damien standard brush for more creases and things like that. I didn't want to go with a hairbrush just because it doesn't quite fit the cartoony style. So I went with the polygonal or the geometric version of hair and things with just edges and creases and stuff like that. Because I think it fits more the cartoony style, kind of a mix between anime and I don't know. So the material is still the skin shader, the basic skin shader, which has a lot of a red in the subsurface. It's the wax preview. So at some point, I think I'm gonna try to change the shade, the material. But for now, this is just trying to. This is helpful to block in the forms and to get what I'm going for. Here, I think, is where I start messing with the materials and changing things. Like I said, I got a lot to learn. I guess that's a little too dark, so I lightened it up a little bit. Here I'm using a mix between the slide brush and the move tool, which is the topology move tool. I don't exactly know how to explain how it works, but it's different than the regular move tool. Slide is basically sliding geometry around like it's clay. So if it was wet and you stuck your finger in the clay and started sliding it around, that's kind of what the slide brush is for. So I wanted to get a little bit of unevenness and jaggedness in the mustache goatee shape. And I did that all asymmetrical, so it gives it a little bit more character, and it doesn't feel like a CG character, even though it pretty much, I mean, no one's fooling anybody. This is all done in ZBrush, and you can tell because when it renders, it doesn't necessarily look like clay or wax, but I can pretend. I'm sorry if I sound stuffy. It's allergy season and it's pretty bad. Okay, here I am blocking in the headband or the do-rag kind of thing. It's actually based on a buff, or what they call buff. It's basically a tube that you stick on your head. I wear many different versions of buffs. If you've seen the YouTube channel, you already know that. So it's essentially a tube. So I started with a sphere primitive and just cut it, and at some point I'm going to dynamesh it so I can start pushing it around. And I did most of this sculpting asymmetrically just because I wanted it to feel a little bit more natural. And my hair is not symmetrical in any stretch of the imagination. So at some point I turn symmetry off and just start pushing and pulling things. Here I do some dynamesh work, and I think I also do a remesh on this, like a Z remesher, just to keep the geometry a little bit more uniform, because eventually I'm going to poly paint that with either a pattern or maybe not a pattern, but at least if I lay out the UVs in a proper way, that'll give me the opportunity to either paint it with a Photoshop texture and some photos of actual buffs that I have in my collection, or just make something up. So yeah, not much more. A lot of smoothing, a lot of Damien standard brush here. There I remeshed it so it has more uniform topology, and then that gives me more geometry to work with when I'm doing these creases, and it lays it out in a manner that makes it a lot easier for me to lay it out as a UV, lay out the UVs later whenever I decide to figure that out. So I'm just trying to follow the flow of where the hair will theoretically fit underneath this sucker. So a lot of creasing, a lot of pushing and pulling of forms using the standard brushes like Damien standard and then the standard brush, just to, it's not going to get too detailed because the focus is still very much the face. And so if you if you spend too much time detailing every little bit, it tends to pull focus from the thing that you want people to focus on. So I'm not getting too crazy with the creases and the folds and the shapes like that. I'm just kind of going over so you get the impression of folds and you get the impression of creasing. This isn't terribly high resolution just yet. I'm not going to go into photo references and like make every single curve and bump mean something. No, I'm just trying to give you the impression of a hair thing strapped to the head. And I do that in cartooning a lot too. So things I want people to notice more will have a lot more detail than things that I don't necessarily care too much about, but have to be there. And anytime I can draw your attention with an expression in the face, I do that. So I'm going to try the same thing in this 3D here. That expression is a good start, but I'm going to push it a lot further. So yeah, that's pretty much my philosophy when it comes to modeling things. Detail things you want people to notice, not so much on things that don't matter as much. Which is probably why I don't work in the gaming industry or the movie industry, because everything has so much detail. But it'd be cool. I have a lot of fun now sculpting in ZBrush and playing with the polygons, mostly because it's for fun or for very specific needs. I'm working on some toy designs that are using some 3D models. So if you're familiar with the Nomlings, my other webcomic that has kind of died since Hazel was born, I'm working on modeling those characters as toys, and we're gonna get them made, and we're gonna hopefully have a few for the convention season this year. But I'm getting ahead of myself. But I have a lot of fun with the sculpting. It's a new skill to develop, and I like learning new things. So I'm at the excitement phase of learning ZBrush right now. I'm sure if I had to do this for a job, it would possibly be less exciting. But here I'm gonna just block in the rest of the hair. So I'm starting again with a polysphere, and then I'm gonna do some dynamushing. I turn it into a dynamesh and dynamush it around, using the move slide brush and just regular brushes, and again a lot of Damien standard brush. I lean on that thing quite a bit. It's pretty cool. So I've played with ZBrush before. There are a couple of previous versions. I don't remember what version I had before, but it didn't have Dynamesh. So there would always be a point in my sculpting where one area would be way highly detailed and another area wouldn't be so detailed, and you could definitely tell when you drew a stroke that things were unproportional in terms of polygon density. So I'm super excited about Dynamesh, and for people who use ZBrush all the time, I'm sure Dynamesh isn't new. I'm sure they had it like years ago, and I'm just now dicking around with it. But I mean, for me, this has opened up a whole bunch of new possibilities for just getting into the forms and just jumping into things. So something like this, if I was poly modeling in Maya, would have taken me like an entire week, and I did this in the space of an hour last night. So I mean, I'm pretty pleased. It's not great, it's not perfect, but it's a lot more that I could do than I could do if I was just going polygon by polygon. So yeah, I believe I'm getting close to the end, so I don't know what else I can say. But I hope you enjoyed watching me figure out how to use this thing.